Well, welcome to the Jerry Reynolds Show. And for those of you that haven't figured it out, I am Jerry Reynolds.
Who is that hasn't figured that out?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we're here at the lovely McCurry studio, as we always do. And, of course, the site of McCurry's Home Furnishings, where you can get the very best furniture in town, no question about it. And on that note, I've got another special guest, very special guest.
Yeah, he's special, all right.
And semi-talented.
Maybe.
Scott Moak,
Yes, sir.
Better known probably to many of you as the public address announcer for the Sacramento Kings. I know that's the least of many things you do, but it's
one of them, for sure.
It's one of them.
It affords me the opportunity to chat with you and have dinner with you a couple nights a week during the basketball season, which is among my favorite parts of my job.
Yeah, that is. It's one of those things that it's kind of strange, but I mean, I always say that there's nothing better than a free meal.
That's right.
And the
That's
only
right. I don't have to cook it.
the only thing better is then getting to talk basketball with somebody,
Over a free meal.
Over a free meal.
Is there anything better?
And we do that several times a year.
I know.
And I've enjoyed that. We go back quite a few years
We
now,
do,
don't
yeah. It's been I've been blessed to be part of the Kings family with you for creeping up 18 years now, creeping up on two decades, which is a little crazy. And
That is a little
I am not kidding when I say it is truly one of my favorite parts of the night when I get to go to games sitting with you and Jay Ross and G-Man, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes before we have to get to wherever we have to be. Which for you is going to grab a big bag of popcorn and getting up to your station.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you have to.
Well, actually, now I do almost reverse. I go out to my station and come back and eat popcorn in the press room.
You're always a step ahead.
I've always kept my strategy in place, Scott, is I start every day slow and then taper off.
Taper from there. I know. It's words I live by. You told me that. You told me that back in 2003 or 4, I think, and I have literally every single day of my life tried to match it.
Yeah, well, I've pretty much got it down to an art form now.
You're too much.
But just going back a little bit, we were just visiting really before we started the show, and of course you went to Kennedy High School.
I did,
and and we're a baseball player.
I was a baseball guy.
What position did you play?
I played first base. Nothing well is probably the first.
Well, I've heard that, but
it's kind of like my life today. I still do not ever anything quite well enough to do one thing. Played first base. Maybe pitched a little bit. I had 7 or so different pitches that all did about the same thing. Which isn't very helpful. My fastball, my slider, and my curveball all looked about the same. But I got to play for my dad, obviously, which was a special thing for me throughout high school. I did play football too. I was the center. I was the same size, this pear-shaped human that I am today. I was really almost the same size when I was in high school. So I was a big kid. So I played offensive line. I played all 4 years. And admired basketball. Never played at that in high school.
Had a lot of good teams during that time.
Amazing teams. I mean, super fun to watch. Spider Thomas, who I know you know, was the coach at the time. Spectacular teams. Even when I was young, because my dad, having taught at Kennedy High School for all those years, starting in around the mid 80s, I was going to games. I was in a gym, just like you were, and many of us were as kids. And got to watch amazing basketball played at Kennedy High School. I mean, the likes of Yogi Stewart, obviously, came out of there and played on the Kings for a little while, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good time.
Good guy, Yogi.
Oh, great
Stewart,
guy.
Just a great guy.
Great guy. Great family. His brother Michael is actually back. Lewis, is back in town now, working for the city of Sacramento, doing technology work. I mean, so people that even leave Sacramento, it's a fun place to come back to, and it's a place I've called home.
I always thought too. I went to a couple of games over there, and the atmosphere was at that time was almost Hoosier-like. I won't quite say.
I love that you say that.
Because there's not very many places you can go that really has a great, just a religion for basketball, love of it, atmosphere. But Kennedy did.
And I'll pay credit where credit's due. And the guy that I grew up listening to, ironically, is the public address announcer who announced the games for all those years that I was there, young and then growing up. His name was Hassan Hanks. He was a teacher, a middle school teacher at Sutter Middle School. He called himself the Golden Voice when he announced.
He gave himself that name.
I was like, this guy is awesome.
That's good, man.
And he would refer, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to John F. Kennedy High School. This is the Golden Voice. This is how he would start every single game. Let's meet tonight's starting lineups first. And what he knows, and maybe a few others that listen along the way, I copy the way I announce Kings games today is the same way Hassan announced games my entire childhood.
No, so let me ask you this now. So going back to high school, I mean, was that something that interested you right away, or did you just, was that something you just kind of gave a thought to?
I think I definitely was captivated by Hassan. It could have very much been the golden voice, the name that he gave himself, right? But there was something about what he did that was super cool to me, and I don't think ever left, kind of my mind. It was always there running in the background. I knew I was never going to be. I was an okay athlete. I dabbled a little bit in college and baseball and whatnot, but I knew that was never going to be the thing. I love sports. I love being involved in sports, close to sports. So there was definitely at some point. It was probably when I hit UC Davis later on that I realized, like, wait, I could actually still be connected to sports but not play. But Hassan always, back in those days, I can remember, I mean, the way he would say some of those guys' names, just his style, it was so unique, and I remember it to this day.
I'll be. So now, like then at Davis, what did you get involved in anything of that nature?
My intention was to go out. My dad was coach with, close with the coach at the time, Phil Swimley, but I ended up I played some summer baseball before going to Davis, and had hurt my back. Thought it was just a kind of whatever injury, like I'll get over it. And I didn't. I ended up never even being able to step on the field to try out. I had surgery just a few months into my first semester there at school, and ended up being just a student that admired all the Aggie sports from afar. So yeah, never got to play. I don't think I would have played anyway. I wasn't good. I couldn't hit. I was a first baseman that couldn't hit well enough.
Yeah, that's not good.
Not good. It's like a shooting guard that can't really shoot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I felt that way.
Yeah,
I knew it wasn't in the cards for me.
Yeah, the thinning process does always take effect somewhere.
That's exactly right. And a guy that throws a 71-mile-an-hour fastball, probably also not going to really work.
Probably not. No. He's going to have maybe a little stick-em on the ball or something. Something.
Need an advantage somewhere.
Yeah. So now, was that during Jim Soker's?
Soker, that was he had transitioned out. Bob Biggs was the coach
Bob
there,
Biggs, yeah.
And that was probably with anything relating to a microphone is where I started. Eric Hasseltine, the great, who I adore. We were fraternity brothers at Davis at the same time. Eric Hasseltine he knew he was going to be in radio. He wanted to be on ESPN. He wanted to be a sportscaster. He wanted to do that as his craft forever. I just liked watching sports. And he was really good and a friend. He would ask me to come along with him to call games, to be the color analyst from time to time. And just so he would have a second voice there. And I was always like, of course.
Of course.
You want to travel to Carson Newman, Tennessee and help me call the Davis football game? I'm like, yes.
Well, sure.
Why wouldn't I do that? Yeah. So that was really the first time I got to talk into one of these things. And I also got to watch how good Eric was. I mean, that was really one of my first moments of realizing that I am not the radio guy that can do this. What Grant even does, what G-Man does.
Yeah,
is. People think it's so easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is so not easy.
Yeah, that's the thing I always tell fans. They're saying, well, I'd like to do what Grant. Well, you better get a lot of training. I mean, and even there, I mean, it's a gift.
100%.
It's about as just like saying, yeah, I'd like to be like Michael Jordan because I like basketball.
Correct.
Well, okay.
Yeah, no problem. Just go ahead and do that.
Just go shoot a lot of shots. You'll be good.
The way that they make it smooth and engaging and that you can listen to it and never, I mean, one thing with G-Man I'll say over all these years, he can make the same thing sound different. Because really the same thing is happening in basketball. We all know this.
Yeah, it's not that much different.
They're running down, passing, and shooting, and then they run down and pass and shoot. It's the same thing, rinse, repeat. Yet he paints this picture like something different is happening every single time.
Yeah, you can. I always said with Gary and I years ago when I was scouting all the time, and of course we were on 1530 for a lot of years,
right.
and that signal went everywhere. I'd be in Boise, Idaho, or somewhere, and I could listen to G-Man.
I just picture you on the top of some roof with your rabbit ears trying to pick up the game.
No, in Tucson, Arizona, I remember being in Tucson and listening, and like I say, getting the game, and of course G-Man, he, like you say, he painted. I mean, you could see the game without
100%.
just as clear as if you
Still
were
to
there.
this day, and he is not. I know I'm biased. I'm biased about you. I adore you. I love Grant. I love G-Man. He has not lost a step. If
Not a step.
anything, he's gotten better.
And especially he's been able to keep it with terrible places they put radio people now in most places.
I know.
You know, where it's so high.
know.
And I know just the few games that we've done when I was doing color with Grant at the time, where there's 3 or 4 places that were up significantly.
Yep.
It changes
It's
it.
hard.
It's really.
I feel so fortunate to sit where I sit. At some point in time, they're going to have a robot announcing games anyway, so I'll be out at that
Yeah.
point. But like the fact that I get to sit where I sit and knowing what he has to do from the position he's at, whether it's a Golden One Center or anywhere else. I mean, the NBA has kind of moved that way, where they're moving the especially radio further and further away.
And TV will go up too, and it's going up more and more places. But I don't think, but they really treat radio badly.
I mean, which only makes him that much better.
Yeah, well, no question.
I mean,
yeah, and I mean, it's like you said, you know, just being on the front row or like where we get to for the most part. I mean, I always say you're down there in the mud, the blood, and the beer.
That's exactly
you know,
right.
you
Maybe not in that order.
but it's a different game.
It is a different game.
And you hear some of the things, which I love. I mean,
favorite part.
now, as far as actually watching the game, I think you see the game materialize about 10, 15 rows up.
That's
much
right.
better.
For
Much
sure.
better. And, you know, when I was scouting or something, I'd much prefer to be up a little bit.
Yeah, have a little higher
You can see
perspective.
the plays develop and defensively what teams are doing. But I always said, too, my feeling was that, you know, what you lose by going up, I always told Grant, I said, the thing I always felt like was important to me, I could tell pretty quickly, like a quickness advantage, one player over another, matchups, and okay, now this is where the Kings can go for an advantage, or they got to watch out for this. But when you're up there, it's harder to tell.
Right.
You know,
right.
you know, which when you're down there close, you can see, oh, this guy can't cover this guy.
For sure. I'll never forget how, you know, Jimmer was a fascinating draft choice for us. I think the pop that it made when he was drafted, selected, showed up at the airport, started his process of becoming a Sacramento King. Very exciting for a lot of people. I will never forget being down on that floor for Jimmer's first few games, where the memo somehow got around the NBA, attack the guy's dribble.
Yeah.
And to be in the middle, that close to watch guys defensively, Patrick Beverly and those guys get into Jimmer that way and not let him take a dribble. I mean, being there for that, you can't replicate that experience, being that close to watch that.
Yeah, it really was, you know, one of those things that happened so quickly too. I mean, where Jimmer in his college game, you know, could get where he needed to get on the floor easily. And of course, he had great success, just like he's having in China and different places.
That's right.
But just that extra quickness and factor, and conversely, I always remember those first few preseason games or practices, and how easy it was for Isaiah Thomas.
I know.
I mean, you just saw right away. It's like, whoa, this guy was picked here, but one guy is really quite a bit better than the other.
I know, it's so crazy. I mean, and that, you know, I subscribe to the Jeff Petrie school of thought in that the draft is always going to be risky. It's really difficult, and it's just one of the 3 ways that you get better: free agency, trades, or the draft. And the draft is the hardest.
And it's probably it takes the longest.
That's right, especially in today's game.
I always say, and that's why I always say with, you know, fans, they get so excited about the draft. Oh, we got a tank to get the first pick or second pick. And I say, yeah, well, probably the best player will be taken 15th.
That's right.
You know, I mean, that's so often.
60th
Or 60th.
In many cases, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it is a total crapshoot. And I know just what little I've watched in this draft. I'm not sure there's you know, obviously the Kings are not having great success, but I haven't seen anybody that could jump in the starting lineup and make them a bit better.
That's right.
Now, in 3 years,
We'll see.
We'll see.
I mean, and to Grant's credit, he has long said he's not doing any of these draft grading things that people fall into. He says, I'll do it in 3 seasons or 5 seasons or whatever it is, which is probably the right way to do it.
There's very few guys. I mean, and there always are a few guys that are just so gifted, you know, the LeBrons that come in and have an impact, or the Magics, Birds, Jordans, Kobe's. Well, even Kobe and Garnett took 3 years.
Sure.
And, you know, it actually took them 3 years.
That's right.
So most guys, you know, It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
so, well, as you said, I always said, yeah, the trades and free agencies, that's really the quickest way.
That's right.
And,
That's how
and
you
the
turn
best
it.
way. And I always said, if I mean, getting off the topic here, but I think if I were the Kings and you had the 3rd or 4th, 5th, 7th pick, whatever it is, first thing I'd do is look, okay, who can I trade this pick for that I know could step in and play tomorrow?
That's right. That's right.
And then we'll worry about whether he's the guy we get's better than the guy that could have drafted 5 years from now. I don't have 5 years. I don't know how many.
Well, and luckily we are in a market where our fans are among the most patient people on the planet, like literally.
Oh, no
if there's
question.
a patience scale around the world, I'm pretty sure Sacramento would show up as being one of the most patient cities.
Yes.
I mean, the fact that these fans, they continue to love their Kings, they support them. I mean, you watch so many games. Go ahead and turn on an Atlanta Hawks versus, some other Minnesota Timberwolves game on a Wednesday on NBA TV.
Oh, about half full, and fans are
Right. Just
sitting back.
Whereas you come to the same game on a Wednesday at Golden One Center, and the place is hopping and packed and fun, and so I know we're incredibly blessed to be in this.
Of course,
city for
I
that.
think part of it, and you maybe speak to this. I would say it goes back to me when I came in with the team in the little building. 10,333.
I was there with you.
And it just created such an atmosphere. Obviously, the team wasn't real good, although it did make the playoffs that year. People kind
right.
of forgot
I
that.
know.
And, if they hadn't traded away Mike Woods and Larry Drew, would have made it for about another 4 or 5. But
right.
that's another. Still a little bitter about that.
You have the right to be.
but the enthusiasm, and then the fact I've always said that they did a couple things. I don't know if it was very smart. I don't know if it was on purpose, but it was very smart. Did almost no home games on TV.
Right.
Did about 10 a
That's
year.
right. You had to come.
You had to come.
You had to come.
And most of them, of course, most of the road games, and did that for several years that way.
Interesting.
And so they really put a premium on getting tickets, number one. And then the second thing I thought was that the team not being very good thereafter, almost, and the fans still loved the game. Our fans became so knowledgeable, in my mind, about the NBA, far more than so many places,
sure.
because our fans, as you know, they buy their own tickets.
Yep.
It's not corporations.
No.
Where you go into
That's
so
right.
many
Family
markets.
buyers. Right.
Yeah,
You're
yes. And so they actually know the league, and so they'd say, well, the Kings aren't very good, but boy, I sure like watching Karl Malone and
That's
John
right.
Stockton.
I'll watch Dr. J come in on his last game.
Yes,
Right? Yep,
yeah,
totally.
that sort of thing.
Yep,
and
you're right.
and so I think that there's been a carryover of that to where you have legitimate NBA knowledgeable fans, which now, having said all that, obviously, patience has limits.
It does, and I think we might be getting a little close to it. I think it is as you said, an interesting season. I think the expectations obviously were quite higher than they'd been in a while.
Yeah.
I know the coaching change and some of the other changes were only to bring more hope and yeah, we haven't seen it, but fingers crossed. It's still time to close strong.
Here again, it's off the topic, but I think in the last month or so they clearly are playing better.
For sure.
Now, and its record speaks for itself. I was on radio the other day and just saying, well, not only is the record better, but just look at the stats. I'm not necessarily believing all stats, but some, obviously the one-loss record's a pretty good stat.
That's a good one.
And then when you are scoring 7 or 8 more points than you did before,
Right.
and giving up basically the same amount.
Yep.
So that's clear
Something.
improvement.
That's right.
So that's something.
Something
So
is-
you can kind of hang your hat on that.
That's right.
But before I forget, I want to get back to when you finished Davis.
Yeah.
Okay, now where did that take you? What were your thoughts at that time, and where did you see Scott Moak?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I obviously didn't go far away from home. My nest is only 14 miles wide, right? Unlike most people who travel the country and do all, after school they travel and then they go to live somewhere else and then they travel across the country for another job. I mean, I was pretty much, I stayed in 2 counties my entire life, right?
Yeah.
Like Yolo and Sacramento. But I've loved that. I love this town. I love the city of Sacramento. All my family is here, and so it's made it a great place to live. I came back. My dad was still at Kennedy High School. He, I guess, asked, but really more told me that he needed a PA guy, actually. So for basketball and for football. So, and I had never done that before. So I'm like, sure. I mean, tell me what the pay is. And he laughed at me.
Hey.
Right. He's like, how about I feed you before the game? Is that fair? And I said, no. And he said, tough. That's what it,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
that's the deal.
And I realized I also at that point wasn't a good negotiator. So like I was really in trouble. But that was kind of where I started. I coached a little bit of baseball at Kennedy while I was doing PA. I got some jobs. You know, my background is, educationally is in social service and the nonprofit world. You know, I'm a give back kind of guy. That's what my professional life has been. Announcing has always been the moonlighting side of who I am and what I do, which has been super fun and given me so many opportunities that I never thought I would be afforded. But yeah, I came back. I worked for the Sacramento Children's Home, which has obviously been around since the late 1800s, and got to do some work with families and kids and helping make our neighborhoods better. And then I would go and announce a Kennedy High School girls basketball game after work. And I did that for a number of years, like quite a while. And it was, I mean, super fun. And I found kind of this little fun niche that I was able to.
I mean, obviously,
fall into.
were you really obviously having some fun, but really legitimately helping people and being involved in their lives? I mean, you can't really put a price tag on that.
For sure. I mean, I'm blessed. My dad and mom both had, and my grandparents both had these great values of being able to help people when you can, and that it's our duty to do that. And I didn't think twice about that. Like I knew that was, my dad was a teacher, obviously. And so, you know, he was so good with kids and young people. He was a great coach, great mentor. He could just get the most out of schmucks like me who were not incredibly talented. And so, you know, I always knew that was always very interesting to me about how he did that as a career. And so being around young people and helping people and helping them be their best.
Had you thought possibly of coaching?
I did. I mean, I coached the JV baseball team. I was an assistant coach right when I got out of Davis. Which was really fun. I knew I needed to figure out a job plan though. Like this was, you know, that wasn't going to quite do it. But I mean, since I've coached my daughter's softball team. You know, fast forward now, I coached her, you know, 7, 8, 9-year-old softball team, and we'll be coaching my son's little league team here coming up shortly. So, I mean, it's definitely in there. I think a dream of mine would be to figure out how Grandpa and I could coach together. I think that would be fun. And if you want to come and be an assistant coach with us, I am ready for that.
Well,
I will. Endless supplies of popcorn if you will come.
That's very
help coach a
enticing.
baseball team.
You know, I did. You know, when I got out of college, that's kind of what I thought I would do. I'd go to college and play ball, and then get out, and I'd be a high school coach in Southern Indiana, and you know that. And
it is.
And I think had I done that, I'd be very happy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that would have worked, but I got a chance to go different routes, and it all worked out very well. But,
It did.
But I mean, it just. Sometimes I always tell young people, sometimes, you know, just go where the path leads you.
100%.
And try to be the best you can at it.
For sure. My dad said, he said very much the same thing, and maybe a different way, is like, don't say no to opportunities. Try to, you know, explore what it is that you might think you want to do, because you never know where it's going to lead you. I was not the kid or even the young adult that had this 5-year plan and a 7-year plan, and here's all my goals written down on a piece of paper inside of my closet. I was not that kid.
Well, no.
But it all worked out pretty good. I mean, I kind of followed one thing to the next. I was announcing Kennedy High School sports, and then Bruce Werner, the athletic director at American River College, called and was like, hey, I need a guy that can announce volleyball and football. And I'm like, sweet, I'll do that. And then Sac State, Steve Tebbs at the time, one of our dear friends, longtime colleagues, calls and is like, hey, we need a announcer for basketball and volleyball and football. You in? And of course I'm in. And then the Kings thing comes up a couple years later. So like, I never would have thought that's
well, I was going to say though, but a lot of people would think, well, you just started Kings.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just like say, Grant Napier all of a sudden just became all of a sudden.
That's
Kings,
how it works.
Kings, and Gary Gerald just walked onto the. It doesn't
does
work
not
that
work
way.
that way.
Things just you know, maneuver a lot of different for a lot of different ways.
I have. It happens a couple times a season where some sweet, innocent young person comes up. Hey, Scott. Hey, Moak. Dude. I just got to tell you. You know, I love what you do. I love you as an announcer. Like, you've been announcing my entire life, and you're really great at what you do. You know, if it ever came up where, you know, you were like sick or had to be out, you know, I know I could do it. And Oh, are you? Oh, so you're an announcer. Well, no. I don't know. I mean, I don't, but I know I could do it. I could definitely step right in. And I'm like, okay, no, that's
good,
that's
yeah.
cool to hear. Here's maybe what I would recommend is like I can remember announcing the Sacramento Girls Invitational Basketball Tournament where I announced I think 18 games in a 3-day period in an American River College gym with no air conditioning.
Yeah, do that.
Do that first. Do that, and then report back and see how you're doing
Yeah.
at that point, and
Yeah.
kind of flesh it out. But like I don't begrudge the young people. It's American Idol that has destroyed their lives because you can become famous and like do anything. You could become a famous singer overnight.
Or I was watching a thing, American Greed, about the kid on Jersey Shore with, I can't remember, he gave himself a nickname because he had great abs or something.
Oh, okay, sure.
And made $9 million but didn't pay taxes.
Well, that's a problem.
And then, of course,
That's probably not the best way.
probably not the best way. The government's funny like that.
Yeah, they'll find it.
Yeah,
You're not going to escape them.
No. So yeah, there's you don't want to go from A to G.
No.
You probably got to go to B
Get
and
those
C.
letters.
Yeah,
Those letters are important.
Yeah,
Good lessons in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, there really aren't any shortcuts.
know.
That's what people always say. Well, they do the same thing to me. They say, well, I could do color. I said, well, absolutely. It'd be a lot easier to do color than it is play-by-play. But I said, and they said, well, what skills or what does it take to do that? I said, well, generally speaking, the guys that do it have either played a long time or they've coached a long time.
That's right.
I said, that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Now, I don't know that there's any shortcuts other than that. I mean, other than reading a lot of magazines, probably won't work.
No.
But I said, that's kind of it. And I said, they said, well, did you did you want to do? I said, I didn't prepare for it. It just,
but ironically, you were prepared.
I was
By
preparing.
every story that I try to collect from you, reading your book and having dinner with you and listening to broadcasts when you're on, and even now in the role that you're in. I mean, the storytelling ability. G-Man has this too. Grant does too.
Mm-hmm.
Grant's just having to talk about other things mostly, right?
Yeah.
He's mechanically describing what's happening. The storytelling ability is clearly that's where it's at, and you are a absolute master of that, and it's why you are adored in this market, and why you're one of my favorite all-time humans because your ability to like tell these you're and we can't tell all of them because some of them are like inappropriate for even podcasts.
Yes.
Well, the Larry Bird stories and all of that stuff, like basketball junkies like me are just like, this is the greatest thing ever.
What is amazing, just things that just happen. It's not, over years, or, there's this situation that happened or that situation. And, I always say so many Larry stories because I really admired him as not just a player, but as a person.
Yep.
and he'd tell certain things and and he'd always break down the game to its simplest elements, and I always say that's usually a pretty good way to go.
Absolutely.
Like I always kid him about, how do you get, how can you get so many good shots? You're not that quick or fast. And he said, well, when you're the best shooter in the world, it makes you quicker.
How about that? There it is.
Good point.
There it is. It reminds me a little bit, that's on the baseball side, being a baseball guy, Cal Ripken was always the one that said, look, if I'm ever...
Excuse me.
I'm choking you up. I'm giving...
He's killing me.
I'm killing him here. I don't have a...
Moak finally got me.
I got him. Cal Ripken always said when he was going through a slump, I do two things. I see the ball and I swing at it. Like forget all the hands where they're high and the leg kick and the step and the stride and the stance and the hips and what's the chest do.
Yeah.
Forget it. Just simple.
Yeah.
See the ball and hit it.
Well, I always say, too, I always used to talk to players, like Eddie Johnson or different guys are great shooters,
Yep.
and they'd be going through periods where they weren't shooting well. I remember Eddie one time was talking about, I'm not shooting very well. And he said, have you noticed anything? I said, sure. You're taking a lot of bad shots.
Right.
Don't take so many bad
take
shots.
better shots.
Take open shots, and I guarantee you'll start making
That's
more.
great. That's so
But sometimes it's that simple.
Yeah.
Or like a hitter, okay, quit swinging at bad pitches.
That's right. Don't swing at balls. How about that? Let's start there.
Yeah. It's like the old Ted Williams thing, where he had it down to an art form. Okay, I'll hit a pitch here at 375 and down here at 280.
That's next level.
Yeah, that's different worlds. But I mean, that's but you can learn from the greats because they're great for a reason.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I've always said too, I always got a kick out of working, with Bill Russell, because just some of his stories. I mean, I wouldn't say not necessarily a lot of coaching information,
Right.
but life information,
Yes.
and just his approach, he'd always say, because people would always come up and say, well, how would you do against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? He said, let me tell you something. He said, all you can do if you're great is to be great where you are at your time, your era. You can't compete against the future.
No, you're right.
And that's exactly right. That's why I say so many young people just see, all right, the current group.
Yeah.
And they say, well, that's it. There's no,
Right.
different times also had different rules.
100%, especially in the NBA. I mean,
Yeah.
the difference between
Yeah.
that game then. I mean, you go ahead and watch a Pistons clip.
Yeah, where they
Game was different.
Yeah, it was so physical.
Football.
And I mean, football basically. And I always remember when Robert Perry slugged Bill Laimbeer, which was a good move. Yeah. But wasn't even kicked out.
That's right. Like it was a foul, maybe.
Wasn't even kicked out.
Now he's getting flagrant foul penalty 2, a 10-game suspension, and fined $150,000.
Yeah, and like that takedown of Rambus by McHale back years ago.
I know.
I mean, he'd be kicked out of the league or
sure.
suspended for
sure.
half a season.
Crazy. I mean, when you see that stuff and really think, and really that wasn't that long ago in many cases, but to see how the game's changed, it's just.
But too, I always say too, like I love the game now because of the openness of it,
You bet.
and the
Fun to
guard
watch.
and the guard play
Yep.
is really, of course, you can't touch guard, so it makes them so much better than it's so much harder on players years ago.
That's right.
But I mean I always say too that when I first started watching the basketball, just about every guard currently playing would be called for carrying the ball every time they touched it. I mean, they just allow that now. I mean, people say
It gets longer and longer as the game goes on.
I mean, back, when I started, you actually had to put your hand on top of the ball.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And so the interrupted dribble, which is actually carrying the ball, and they do it all the time.
Every time.
But everybody does it, so it's okay.
Must be.
It's okay.
That's right.
So we like it. It makes it fun. So then when you started with the Kings.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to there, and like your first game and
I was a mess.
were you?
Yeah. I mean, the tryout process was a bit interesting. I mean, there were 100. It was in 2000 that they had the open tryout because Fred Anderson, the longtime announcer before and again, the voice that I heard calling Mitch Richmond and Corliss Williamson and all the names. I mean, I was coming to games when I was 12 years old, right? When the team got there, when you were coaching. And so, I mean, that was also the voice that I had kind of heard. And so he obviously passed away. Fred did. And he was amazing. I thought he was a tremendously good announcer.
Just a real nice man.
Nicest man, sweetest
Ever.
family. And so they hold the open tryout in 2000 at a sports bar that doesn't even exist today. I think they knocked it right. It used to be right across from Cal Expo.
Do you think you're responsible for that?
I could have been. Yeah, my appearance inside of the place.
Well, I've just wondered. I mean, I'd heard others say that, but
Yeah,
I didn't.
no, I'll confirm it.
Okay.
I'll confirm it here. I think there's 160 some odd, idiots like me that tried to. And they narrow it down. So we did a tryout. We watched a little basketball and announced it, kind of announcer style. And then they whittle it down to a second round, a third round. I'm still alive. I'm super excited. And then they get down to the final 4. There's 4 of us. And I get to announce a half of a preseason game. That's like the final. Maloofs, John Thomas, they're going to kind of make part of the final decision. So I do my game against, of course, the Seattle Supersonics, who don't even exist anymore. To match that sports bar, right? So everything I'm touching is going away. That's not a good sign. So I do the game. I thought I did great. I get a call a couple days later. I was excited to take the call, and word comes, you didn't get the job. And I was bummed.
Sure.
And I had a couple options at that time. I could have gone nuclear like I wanted to in my head. Like, what do you mean? Of course, I was good. I should have made it, but I didn't. I stayed calm. I continued to do Sac State athletics, do a lot of announcing for them. 2 years later, get kind of the proverbial call back and say, hey, we might have gone a direction that we didn't intend. Would you be willing to come back and at least give it a try and start announcing games? So 2002, which sadly is marked by the Robert Ory shot after. So the Robert Ory shot happens, that season goes on.
Yeah.
I start the next year.
Next year, yeah.
And
Well, actually, that team was actually the most talented team that next year. People forget that. I mean,
best home record in the NBA.
yeah, Weber tears his knee up in Dallas, but I mean, I always thought that team was the best because you had so much depth then.
So much depth.
But anyway.
Super fun. And so, of course, my first game, I mean, other than nearly, having an accident on myself, I mean, I was so nervous. I've heard, people have sent me clips that exist on the internet of me in my first few games. I mean, I don't know who that person is. Like, I'm so shaky, I'm nervous. Like, it took me a little bit to find my path, but man, I mean, looking back, it's been fun. Even though we've been in this drought for a long time, I'm really excited I think that's the thing I think about most is I'm ready for this fan base to be reminded or experience playoffs for many of them for the first time. I mean, you get some of these fans that are in their 20s and 30s. They don't remember what it was like.
No, it really, I agree. It'll be almost, to me, it almost go back to the enthusiasm we had in 1996 when the team with Mitch and those guys got in the playoffs. I
like that.
And I always said that home game against the Sonics was the loudest and most, because the team hadn't been in there for 10 years.
I was there. I was there for the game with my buddy Greg. It was one of my favorite moments of all time.
I mean, it was just remarkable. But it does kind of remind me, you're talking about how nervous you were. I don't remember the first game I had to be head coach because it was the middle of the year and they'd fired the head coach, Phil Johnson, and the top assistant, and they made me the head coach.
Who was the top assistant at the time?
Frank Hamblin. Who
went on? Yes.
Yeah.
Bulls. Where did Frank go? Where did
the Lakers, the Bulls, Milwaukee.
Great coach.
Actually, he was a head coach of Milwaukee for a while. Did not do well there, but overall, as an assistant, was with a bunch of championships. Phil Jackson and all. And so, great guy. Passed away recently. But anyway, and I didn't have an assistant even. So they just said, we want you to take over the rest of the year. And I said, I need a job, and I didn't know what to do. I remember talking to Phil Johnson, and he said, well, you need to work, don't you? I said, yes, I do. He said, well, I advise you, I take the job, and there's no promise of anything, and I didn't really even think I wanted it anyway. And later on, they hired Don Boozy to be an assistant the rest of the year with me. But getting back to the nervous part, we was playing the Lakers. The game before. The break, the All-Star break, that's when the Kings were demolished in L.A. by the Showtime Lakers, and that's why Phil got fired, or that's the reason. And so who's my first game? The Lakers. And
welcome in.
Well, yeah, so make a long story short there, the first quarter of that game that caused Phil's demise was when the Kings did not make a single field goal in the first quarter, and we're down 40-4. Okay, so now we're playing those same guys, and we're down 12-6, and I called a timeout, and I said, and I'm telling the guys, I said, look, guys, we're doing a lot better than we did. I said, so,
wise words right there.
And of course, naturally, we didn't beat them, but it did end up being actually a reasonably close game.
There you go. And you were on your way.
Well, I don't know if I was or not, but I always remember too. Rick Barry was doing the TNT game, and they interviewed me at the halftime in one of those little quick interviews. Of course, he said, are you a little nervous? And I said, I am one scared little buckaroo. I said, I'm not lying. And I mean, that's kind of like there's no, when you are, you are.
Come on, call it what it is.
And so, I mean, you either deal with, and finally you do.
Yeah. And find your little group, which obviously you did. I might still be finding mine, but it's been a fun ride for sure, man.
I get a kick out too, like you talk about fans coming up, growing up listening to you and kind of want to. Of course, I have them. They come up and say, well, I've grown up listening to you and watching on TV, all that kind of stuff. And I say, well, yeah, so does your mom and dad. That's the
right.
That's the parts that depressing for me. Maybe your granddad.
Your granddad watched me when we were young. I remember Buckaroo. Oh my goodness.
Was there any during the years you've done the game, many things you look back on where maybe you screwed up or funny things or unusual things?
I got a few of them. I mean, I think the one that probably jumps out and he reminded me of it. So we had, Mike Bibby is a long time. I mean, he's a staple on the Kings, right?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially for most of my early time doing public address, and so we make the trade. And he goes to Atlanta. Is that how that worked out?
Yeah, I think so.
We got him.
Yep.
Who'd we get in return? I don't know. You might remember that. You're the kind of guy that remembers those things. I don't. So Mike Bibby, for the first time in what feels like an eternity, is not on the Sacramento Kings. He game back, so he's playing at Sleep Train or whatever it was called at the time. Early in the game, right? It's awkward. I give him the fist bump before the game, and he's doing his thing, and he scores a couple points. Early in the first quarter, he's going to the free throw line. And I get on cruise control for a second where I'm like, the free throw line for the Sacramento Kings, number 10, and I stop. And it took me that long to realize that I had just said that Mike Bibby on the Atlanta Hawks is playing on the Sacramento Kings. And he had been given the ball already by the ref and probably had taken a bounce or two to get ready for his free throw. And he stops, and he turns to me, and looks at me as if I was like playing some mind game with him. And I'm like, Mike, no. I messed up. And I didn't even say anything else. I didn't even finish the sentence. So at the break, he comes back over. He's all, really? You're going to do me like that? And I'm like, no, dude, I swear. I got on a rhythm. Like, I just forgot. I'm sorry. And he was like, no, I'm just playing with you, man. I'm just playing with you. But that was, announcing a guy that's not on your team.
Well, yeah, you can see how that could happen. I mean, I think everybody could.
Oh, my goodness.
You get so used to certain guys for periods of time and all.
I was in a groove there.
Yeah, you were.
Bano, I got when you sit down that low too, you get blocked. There's referees. It feels like all over the place. I know there's only 3 of them, but sometimes it feels like there's 7 of them, especially with the rate in which sometimes they're calling fouls. There's coaches, there's guys subbing in, there's ball boys and equipment people. Like, there's all these people in front of us. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's the best seat in the house, like best view. Well, sometimes it's not. Like, when you have 6 big bodies that are waiting to check in and a coach and a ref.
Yeah, and then, on your vision,
you don't see
either side.
That's exactly right. So Bano is going for a layup drive. I swore I saw the thing drop. So I call out, Bano! Ooh! And I realize, like, people are like, there's a reaction that I'm not used to. That ball didn't go in.
Didn't go in.
No, didn't go in. And everyone's like, no, it didn't go in. I'm like, oh, great. So I just announced a basket by Bano that didn't actually exist.
Actually, the best seats in the house were the seats that Grant and I used to do the games in the old Sleep Train.
On the other side.
On the other side.
I mean, and when Grant, you guys both used to say, like, these are the best seats in the house. You're not lying.
Yeah, the best. And, that was just perfect. You never really had any blockage, although sometimes Melissa would move her seats up a little closer. And, I want to say, Joe.
Gavin, scoot on back.
Can you scoot on?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Jerry. Sorry about that.
So, but that's about it anyway.
For sure. Yeah. And what it also allowed you to do is, like, halftime, you had a direct line to the restroom.
Yes.
See, and this is where you're always ahead of the game.
It's a good thing that I don't do many games with Grant anymore, because that's a critical point.
You bet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality.
I always said that was the thing. When I'd go to a new arena around the league,
scope it out.
Got to find out where the press room is.
Scope it out.
Where the quickest way to get to the restroom.
So smart.
Smart.
This is why you are, like I said,
that's why how you get to be a wily, cagey veteran. You hear that.
You are. I mean, you're a wily, cagey buckaroo that has veteran tendencies.
Has veteran skills, but I mean, really, it's like, especially those when you get over 50, and you all know what I'm talking about.
They do.
Every one of you.
They do. I'm not 50, and I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it just so it becomes a real issue.
You bet.
Definitely an issue.
You bet.
So and that's what's good about doing the pre and post game, because really never have to be away from a restroom more than a half hour.
There you go.
And that's pretty much my limit.
I've had a few, since we're on this topic, I'm sure this is what people want to hear.
I bet it is.
There's been a few where we've gone to OT, double OT, where I'm ready to explode.
Yeah.
And you literally have to just start playing mind games with yourself. Because there's nothing, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, there's nowhere, I'm trapped, I'm tethered. I have theoretically a job. I have to, like, yell people's name out. I can't make a break. And we're in double overtime now. And I've had to go since the 9-minute mark of the second or the third
and
quarter.
I would think too, you know, a yell might
It might cause problems.
but of course that's what I hate about commercial flying. I think I'd rather take somebody jab me in the eyes and make me get on a commercial flight because you're crammed in there.
Crammed also.
And you know, and it's just about the time they start heading down the runway, you need to go to the bathroom. So I know you don't really need to know that, but it's
This
true.
restroom break brought to you by McCreary's.
Yeah. So anyway, so I didn't realize, that was the year. So you really started off with a great team, and
Oh man, so fun. I mean, the home atmosphere was super fun. Everybody had that pent up energy still from what had happened. With the bat out and the shot, and I think there were a lot of people who still remained incredibly hopeful because the team was so talented. But what a fun time to start, really. I mean, the golden era, really, in many cases, because I mean, they maintained that success. I mean, never quite got to the final checkered flag, but man, they were good.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. Like I say, that year, I was convinced that was even a more talented team. The record wasn't quite as good, but there wasn't anybody, with the Kings healthy that could beat them.
Agreed.
I don't think.
And at home. I mean, that team at home, I mean, and clearly, Arco crowd, Sleep Train crowd had 100% had to do with it being such an ominous place to play. I mean,
really, no question. They intimidated
said it.
a lot of teams and coaches. Only the truly great players could come in there and not be affected.
Block it out.
Yeah.
And starting with the old locker rooms. I mean, I'm sure you were probably involved in some of the, fresh coats of paint and no air conditioning and all that stuff that really has gone by the wayside. Now, I mean, it's like you're trying to treat in these new arenas, treating the visiting team as good or better than you are your home
we
team.
had those lockers were just awful for the visitors, and of course, having said that, I mean, the old Boston Garden, I mean, that was like some old high school, they read hardback. I mean, that was just part of the punishment.
And he wanted it that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They were going to keep it that way.
You bet.
Yeah. And I mean, that was so, but like you say, those times are gone and probably should be.
Well, now you're recruiting free agents without ever having to say a word by showing them how great they could be treated in their visiting.
Well, and now you do it by practice facilities, which are sometimes part of the thing, or nice ones away from the facility. But every team has them, and so everybody. So it's all such a different, different thing. But that was. I always say too is kind of interesting. I was listening to a thing. Bill Burr is one of my favorite comedians. I know the guy's
great
out there, but he had made I was on a podcast or something, was talking about how players were in baseball were talking about how that the Houston Astros should have to give up the championship because they cheated.
Yep.
He said, well, if they do that, then they ought to give the Sacramento Kings the championship because they were cheated.
Hey,
I said,
I like what he's on. I like what he's on to.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an interesting man. What a ripple effect that's had around sports now. I mean, you see other athletes, LeBron and others, that are weighing in on that and what that does. But I mean, that was what a crazy.
It's really sad. I mean, the sport doesn't need that, and certainly it's probably been handled as poorly as it could be. Whew. And it's just a ripple effect for sure, a lot of ways.
On all sports.
Sure. And of course, the thing that's always bothered me a little bit is it's always some cheating is accepted and some isn't. I always say there's guys in the Hall of Fame that are there for throwing spitballs.
That's right.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
But they're in there.
You're right.
And everybody knew they were doing it.
Yeah. You're right about that. My offensive line coach in high school used to say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yeah.
So, those days are...
and it's legal to try to steal signals.
Sure. Yeah, I rode the bench in college. I would try to
so there's no
swipe
wrong
signs all the
it's
time.
just obviously the way they do
How
it.
you're doing
How you're doing it.
Yeah, when you're trying to, a lot of times we'd sit as far down in the dugout as you can so you can maybe catch that catcher, coming out with his signs a little bit and in the crouch, and you see, you pick up what the signs might be, or from the coach that's given the signal. I mean, we try to do that, pick up signs all the time, but that's, wildly different than what this was.
Yeah.
This was so advanced.
So advanced. Yeah, when a player can sit and knows exactly what pitch is coming, I mean, obviously it's a tremendous advantage.
Come on. Yeah, that's what these players are saying. I mean, Mike Trout coming out and saying, like, look, if I know that I'm getting an off-speed pitch.
Yeah. That, that's out of there.
Come on.
Come on. Yeah. Whew. So no, it is too bad. I mean, I just wonder, hopefully, I don't know what they can do, but I mean, I think to me, I'm kind of with pardon the interruption crowd and all that there ought to be suspensions and you could, with most of the players, and you wouldn't have to have all of them suspended at the same time.
Right. That's right. Yeah, but there does need, I mean, it does feel incomplete that there aren't consequences for doing that, for taking part in that. I think that, I mean, there was a video that came around the other day in a spring training game where the catcher from the Cubs throws his face mask. He's upset at a call, throws his catcher's face mask into the dirt. It ricochets up and hits the umpire in the leg. Well, he gets thrown out and maybe suspended a game. That's where we draw the line.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going to get a suspension. But guys that were cheating and won a World Series title, don't get
suspended.
What?
Come on. I mean, and to me, they just have to do more than they're doing, and I certainly support the commissioner, whoever. As far as the throwing at guys, I'll never. I don't care about the unwritten rules. I mean, there's a chance you can kill somebody,
that's exactly right.
When that happens, and if it happens, then
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
I mean, there's a culture in hockey with that, like the protective factors that guys, the enforcers that they're called, right? In baseball, I mean, like part of baseball that, like, if something happens and there's going to be some retribution, I mean, you're going to wear one right in the middle of your numbers and your back. But it is very scary when you're talking about guys that are throwing 96, 97 miles an hour with a helmet that's not covering your entire face and that ball drifts up. I mean, it's way, way too much.
I am glad to see some of the rules change in baseball, just like all sports, certainly basketball, of course, fighting and stuff. I mean, I really think hockey is they've cut down on a lot, but it's still
behind the times.
Still behind the times.
I agree.
I mean, I just don't quite get that.
Yeah.
But I mean, but like in baseball, when I was growing up, I mean, the idea was to actually take the second baseman out on a double play and stuff. Now, why are they fair game? Why are you allowed?
Right.
To go.
Right.
Why is that allowed? Or run over the catcher? Which now that's been changed.
Right.
In other words. Of course, and why could a catcher block the plate without the ball? If you can do that first, why can't you do first base? Why can't the first baseman block?
Can you imagine that?
I mean, so I get into all those.
Right. Yeah.
Things
if this, then that. Then that. You can play that game all the time.
And of course, conversely, what that led to back in those days where you could take out the second baseman is that, they had the phantom tag. So umpires let the second baseman really not have to touch the base on the double play because to save themselves.
You bet. Yeah.
And so
preservation.
So you don't really have to touch. You just come somewhat close.
That's right. And now, I mean, we're close to having robots run the whole game anyway.
Yeah. So, and now they can slow it down step by step to where he slides into second. His pinky toe pulls up there 1/10 of a second off the base and he's out.
Those poor umpires, those officials. I mean, we're seeing it right now. I know that we've had some chats about replay and where that's headed. I mean, it's a fascinating part of the game where coaches now have the opportunity to hit a button. I mean, I kind of wish they would have given them something more ridiculous. Like, not the button is fine. Like, coach wants to challenge, he goes over and he presses the button. Mm-hmm. Don't you feel like it would have been a great opportunity for him to, like, shoot off a firework?
Yeah,
or
there you go.
So just go over the top with it. I mean, a flag would have been fine, but, like, I don't know, like a flare gun. You get to fire a flare gun.
Or one of those things, like on the yard things you throw in sticks in the yard that you could hit a ref with.
Lawn darts. You just throw it right to him.
A lawn dart, right?
Yes. Yeah. Impale number 63, the referee.
I think you're onto something there.
Gosh, I have such good ideas.
You do, yeah. Probably not going to take effect, but I mean, I do think it's like once you go down that slippery slope, and I'm with Grant on this, that we've talked about it before. Is that hey, quicker, if
let's go.
Yeah.
Why is this taking 2.5 minutes?
Yeah, you've made the call, and if you can't tell it for sure,
a minute. 60 seconds.
Yeah,
right.
I even say maybe 30.
30, sure.
You get 2 or 3 looks at it. the referee called it,
Right.
whatever he called it,
Right.
out of bounds, so it's King's ball, whatever, and you can't see anything different.
We're back to play.
Back to play.
Let's go.
Yeah.
No, I'm totally with you guys.
And then the the 2-minute thing, after the game, get rid of that. It serves no purpose. It just makes you madder.
Right.
It serves no
Last,
purpose.
no.
Yeah, it's not fair to the officials either, really.
True.
They got an impossible
They've got a tough job. No, they're not making anybody happy ever.
Ever. No, I really have come to respect, always respected officials. I mean, even though I might act like an idiot, but I...
Yeah, but that's kind of your job.
And I was an idiot. And I always knew that, once you see the play, I'd go home and watch the tape and think, oh, my God, what did I bitch about that for?
Right.
What an idiot.
Right. I mean, very few people in professional sports have ever no basketball player that I'm aware of in the last 15, 20, maybe longer, has ever committed a foul.
No.
Not one foul has ever been committed
No.
in the National Basketball Association.
Yeah, even the guys that handle it pretty well, they go up and just quietly whisper something, as opposed to most that make idiots of themselves, make a big deal of it, and and the home team thinks they're getting a raw deal
Every single time, 100%.
I always say with fans too, though. Every fan, they'll walk out. The Kings got screwed tonight. Blah blah blah. The referees really took the game. What did you think? I said, well, if you're going to blame them when you lose, are you going to give them credit when you win?
That's right.
I want you to walk out of the building.
We've had a few.
Say, well, we won tonight. The refs really screwed those guys.
We were playing 8-on-5 tonight.
you never hear that, do you?
Never. I will say this. One of the things when you were talking about the way that certain guys react to fouls, the one guy that I feel like, since I've been doing this and sitting down there, the one guy that surprised me the most about fouls and committing or having them committed against him, Ron Artest. Never one time did I ever see that guy argue a call. I mean, am I wrong? Do you remember?
No, he was great that way.
Never, ever, and especially coming in with all of the things that had happened and his background and the way that people viewed him because of what happened in Detroit. I mean, that guy would never argue a call. And if he did, you knew he was right.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. You lose some credibility if you're arguing every time. That's exactly. You have to pick your spots.
Yeah. That's a great Ron Artest. Brought up a thought here. I always remember when we traded for Ron Artest, Peja for Ron, and Jeff Petrie asked me, said, we're going to make this deal, so I want you to call Larry and just get whatever information that he's willing to give you about Ron, and then tell him, exactly about Peja, what he can expect, and because
I want to be on that call.
Okay. Anyway, so we were visiting about different things, and of course, obviously with Peja, it's all very positive, other than the fact he's having back problems, but they knew that.
Yeah.
So it was no secrets there that he wasn't quite the same Peja.
Sure.
But I remember Larry said, well, there's a couple things about Ron that you'll notice. He said, I'll tell you right now. He said, all your young players will love him. He said, they will absolutely love the guy. He'll be great with those guys. He said, now the other thing, he said, be ready for. He said, half the guys in the league are scared to death of him.
Right.
And the other half ought to be.
There you go. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
And that was absolutely true.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was such an intimidating player.
And the crazy thing is when we got to know him a little bit.
Yeah.
You saw, at the time,
good heart, good,
amazing,
good spirit to the guy.
100%, like a kind man in there. And I mean, I saw him at the bank multiple times. I saw him at the grocery store every single time. Hey man, I never would have remembered my name.
He's one of those guys. I would say it's a little bit like Corliss Williamson, probably one of the nicest, most gentle,
for sure,
wonderful people we've ever had, and terrific player.
Yep.
And ball goes up, both those guys, and they turn into different people. I mean, you talk about the fires burning deep.
Metamorphosis.
Yes.
100%. Big Nasty was for sure.
Big Nasty, not walking backwards ever.
No.
And, but that's the way it should be. Ball goes up, you compete. I always say that, you got time, you can hug everybody in the area after the game.
100%. That's right.
Too many of our guys in today's game want to hug everybody during the game. But anyway.
Hugging and loving and
So anyway,
Knock it off.
Well, anyway, I don't know if we covered anything you wanted to discover.
Oh, I mean, we got the big topics. We got our test in there. We got bathroom breaks.
Yeah, and the good press rooms and
Good press rooms.
Good press rooms.
What to do to the fan that walks up and wants to be a color analyst or a PA analyst. What haven't we covered?
I think we did it. Well, there you go. I mean, when you have Scott Moak on there, you get all you need and more, probably. So,
Start slow and taper off from
start
there.
slow and taper off. That's our motto, and that's what we'll continue to do. So, Scott, so much
My
enjoyment
honor,
here.
man. You're one of my faves of all time.
Well, thank you. You
bet.
You're mine too. So maybe we need to set our standards higher. I don't know.
We'll start.
Anyway, well, so thanks for joining us, and remember, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, baby. That's what I'm telling you.